want to talk about a few important ideas that are at the heart of Tai Chi that we have to understand if we want to practice correctly. So first of all, the name taijiquan is our first hint. It's usually translated as the grand ultimate fist. Tai Chi, grand ultimate, Xuan, fist. But the word grand ultimate doesn't mean that we're talking about simply as something that's the best. Grand ultimate has a very specific meaning within Taoist cosmology. The grand ultimate is the taiji. It's that symbol of the black and white swirl together. It's essentially the state of the universe after the wuji, the oneness of the universe, separates for the first time, and the yin and yang appear as opposite but complementary forces. So grand ultimate is a specific meaning. It's the yin and yang forces in action. So taijiquan, the grand ultimate fist, it's not the super duper punchy thing. It's the fist of the taiji. It's the fist of the yin and yang forces. And that's a fundamental idea, and which is why in the Tai Chi classics, when they talk about making clear between full and empty, what they're referencing is that your practice must reflect this idea of the yin and yang being clear, the emergence of the yin and yang, as opposed to the next step in the cosmological evolution, which is the 10,000 things, when things get muddied and complicated. That's the difference between the taiji, the yin and yang forces, and then the rest of the world, the material world within all of its complexities. So the goal of Tai Chi as a practice, as a martial art, is to identify the primary forces, the yin and yang, and acknowledge them and play with them. Right? How they each transform into one another, and how they support each other, and how we must become aware of those forces within us and in the world around us. That's why it's called taijiquan. That's not a random name. It points us specifically at a set of philosophies, but also a physics of how the world works that we're supposed to really pay attention to. So, in the form itself, there are two types of moves. There are the named moves, and then there's the 8 basic moves of Tai Chi. And I'll explain how that actually relates to what I just mentioned. But first of all, the named moves are things like single whip, right? White crane spreads its wings. All of those named moves are a combination of the 8 basic moves that we have. And in Tai Chi, the 8 basic moves is push, press, roll back, ward off, and then you have twisted joint, you have shoulder strike, elbow strike, and yank or pluck, depending on how you translate it. So those are the 8 basic moves, and that's in the Tai Chi classics. And we have the 4 main moves out of those 8, which is Pang Lu Anji, ward off, roll back, push, and press. The reason why we have 4 major ones and 4 minor ones, the reason why we have 8 moves at all, is again because we've working off of this idea of the yin and yang. And very early on, in this analysis of the yin and yang forces, the Taoist philosophers then developed the idea of greater yin, greater yang, lesser yin, lesser yang. So already we have 4. It's essentially as the yin and yang forces start being self-referential. So what is the yin and yang of the yang force, and what is the yin and yang of the yin force? So that gives us 4 different options. And then that evolves one step further, and we have the trigrams that give us the bagua, which gives us 8 possible permutation of yin and yang. That's why we have 8 basic moves in Tai Chi, because the 8 basic moves are a reflection of the permutation of yin and yang, and those permutations become 8 in the bagua. And there's 2 different baguas, the pre-heaven bagua and post-heaven bagua. We're going to look specifically at the pre-heaven bagua as a way of arranging and decoding these 8 moves. But the important thing to remember is that all the moves in the form originate or evolve or expressions of these 8 basic moves that we have. There is nothing which is not one of those 8. everything is within this bagua, okay, which is the trigrams, the 3 lines of yin and yang. That gives us 8. So each named move is composed of one of the 8, or several of the 8s put together. The killer example, the signature move of Tai Chi, which is single whip. Every different style has a different way of doing it. You can have in the classic Yang style, you have single whip. In the Michuan style, you have single whip. And I'm going through this fast. All of those are constructed out of the 8 moves. So this. And this is where this becomes a very important and interesting exercise, is identifying what are these moves. Is this a ward off and push? In the Michuan style, roll back, pluck along the horizontal, push, push, ward off, drag down, or yank, push. So I can name, as I go through, I can actually name which of the 8. And you can see then that there's quite a lot of complexity, right? Roll back, pluck, push, push, ward off, push, or pluck, push. You can do that with every single move, where you can break it down, and what it does is it gives you the quality that you're supposed to express at each individual moment. That's why this is so important. Because if you're only doing single whip, and you're doing it because that's what you were told, single whip is this, then you're missing out on the core energies that you're supposed to be expressing with your body through the form. If you're just moving your arm in the air, okay, this is okay. We're pushing, that's easy, but what's this? Which direction are you pushing in? Are you circling and pushing? Is this the moment of drawing in? Or are you pushing out to the side? Those are the questions that you have to answer. Otherwise, you're simply moving your arm through the air. Right? So, similar here in the Michuan style. Roll back. Roll back. What is this? If you've never asked yourself what is the quality of this move, then you're missing out on one of the core elements of single whip. After the rollback, the drawing in deflection, is a pluck, a yank. Right? So this here is the short yanking motion. Push. And there's of course also the discussion we can have about applications and how they're expressed through all these moments. But the important thing is that in the doing, we're moving from core, one of the 8 core moves, to the next, to the next, to the next, each of them in different directions. And it's the lining up of these 8 different moves that creates the named move, that creates a technique. Same, for example, with drag down, which in the Michuan style is here and push. Actually, if you want to be really precise, it's here, drag down and push. That's drag down. It's actually roll back, yank or pluck down, and then push. So drag down is roll back, yank, push. Roll back, yank, push. That's drag down. So again, if you didn't identify each of those moments, you would just be moving your hands through the air. And there's no way of expressing, or no way of knowing how to express those energies. So let's go through those 8 basic energies, or 8 basic moves, or 8 gates, actually is what would be the proper term, because the Bagua, each trigram is really called each gate. So the 8 basic gates, which gives us the 8 moves, and each gate is then assembled together to create the named moves that we find in the form. So the four main moves in Taishi is Peng, Lu, An, Ji. Ward off, roll back, push, press. So let's take a look at Peng, ward off. There's a lot of confusion about Peng, and mostly it's because it doesn't feel like a deflection. It feels very aggressive, like you're just smacking something, right? That the arm is expanding, and it's this kind of expansion of force. But you have to be very careful, and this is why it's so important to keep in the back of your head what exactly you're doing, which of these 8 elements you're doing. Peng is not an expansion out. If I just do this, that's not a Peng. That's a push. That's a strike. The definition of Peng is that it's an expansion, but it's along a circle. So here I'm sweeping up. That's the Peng, sweeping up. So the direction of travel is up. Up. It's a circle. So what I'm doing is I'm not hitting out here, I'm sweeping upwards. I'm brushing up. In the same way, I can do a Peng here, brushing to the side. I can do a Peng here, brushing to the side. The definition of Peng is that it's a circular outward deflection. Peng generates a circle that brushes an attack to the side. That's Peng. As opposed to Lu, which is also a deflection, but it's one that is drawing in. Lu is a yin expression of the deflection, whereas Peng is a yang deflection of the expression. Both Peng and Lu share one very important thing, that they're both at heart yin expressions, which means they're defensive expressions. And this we can see very clearly especially in the beginning when we do a Peng. The Peng relies on first receiving a push, receiving the information, which means you can't just walk up to somebody and do a Peng on them. If you do that, what you're doing is actually a push. Peng means that somebody is pushing you, and you receive that energy and you push it to the side. The receiving of the energy is the yin component. You receive energy, find it, deflect it through an outward energy. That's what makes it a Peng, an outward circular energy. Lu, or rollback, you receive that energy, and instead of deflecting it outward, you deflect it inward. That's what makes it a Lu. That's what makes it so yielding, because you're simply getting the energy towards you, and you're redirecting it. You're letting it go through, as opposed to pushing it away. That's what makes it a Lu, as opposed to a Peng. They're both deflections. Peng is a circle outward. Lu is a circle inward. Circle inward, yielding. That's Peng and Lu. Now, push and press. An and Ji. Like ward off and roll back, they're yin and yang expression of the same idea, which is except that this time it's a yang expression of energy, which means it's an attack, it's an outward expression of energy. Push is the yang aspect of that. Push is about generating a straight line of energy, a straight line of force. Now, we translate it an as push, as if push is always a single, two-handed gesture. The thing to remember is that all of these are qualities of energies. They're not techniques. So a push can be with 2 hands, can be with 1 hand. A push can be a punch. A push can be a strike with the elbow. It can be a kick. All of those are push energies, because what you're doing is you're generating a straight line of force. Press is also generating a straight line of force, but it's a straight line of force that has yin qualities. Right? Because instead of shooting an energy straight out, you're trying to generate an energy which is actually heavy. The goal is to attack your opponent's root. You're expanding in a circle, dropping energy into your opponent's leg or rooted foot. That's the difference between push, an, and press, Ji. Ji is short, heavy energy, but it's still an outward energy. Now, we know that those 4 moves, Peng, Lu, An, Ji, ward off, roll back, push, press are the four corners or the four main moves, because that's what the Tai Chi classics tell us. But there's a reason why there's four of them. And we saw earlier when we talked about the Taiji, the yin and yang symbol, that very quickly this yin and yang energies were then split into greater yin, lesser yin, greater yang, lesser yang, which is basically the yin and yang polarity of yin and the yin and yang polarity of yang. That's what these four moves are. They're expressions of the yin and yang expression of a deflection and the yin and yang expression of an attack. That's why we have four main ones. And that's why they map out onto the Bagua as the cardinal directions, which we're also told in the Tai Chi classics. So these four moves, Pang, Lu, An, Ji, hold the cardinal position, north, south, east, and west, on our Bagua. So now we have the next four to fill, and those hold the diagonal position on the Bagua, which tells us that they are actually made out of more complex combination of yin and yang energy. Whereas the first four moves are balanced, more or less, the other full yin, full yang, or a balanced mixture of yin and yang, or a balanced mixture of yang and yin. Now, with the next four, we're getting with a little more complex, a little more unbalanced versions, in a way, of these yin and yang combinations. In the same way that we had the yin and yang expression of defense, which is Lu and ward off, and yin and yang expression of offense, which is push and press, then the other four moves, which is elbow strike, shoulder strike, yank or pluck, and twist the joint, are also split along offense and defense between yin and yang. And here yin and yang as a root, which means are they yin expressions that are then become more complicated, or are they yang expressions that are then get also more complicated? So the two yin expressions are elbow strike and twist the joint. So those are two moves that at their core are yin in nature. So elbow strike, and this is where thinking about these things really elucidate quite a bit about the moves themselves. Elbow strike, right, is here and here. If you only think in terms of the name, elbow strike, and you think, oh, it's about hitting somebody with the elbow. Well, hitting somebody with the elbow is a push. Because if you're generating a line of force that's straight, you're doing a push. That's a push energy. It's an on. It doesn't matter which body part you're using to express a straight line of force. If I'm pushing with the elbow, that's a push. It's not an elbow strike. What makes elbow strike an elbow strike is the fact that, first of all, it's a deflection. It's first a deflection, which then is transformed into a point. That's the yang component. It starts yin and becomes yang. That's elbow strike. So really it's deflection, ground yourself, and receive energy onto the elbow. And if you work on it in application, you'll see exactly what this means. There is no forward direction. That's the crucial thing. It's deflect and a receive. And if somebody is attacking you, and you deflect and you let them fall onto the elbow, that's elbow strike. Okay? That's crucial, because then it means you're never moving forward. You're not coming here and then moving forward for the elbow strike. You are deflecting and sitting to receive the energy. You're deflecting and sitting to receive the energy. Very different. Now, similarly, twist the joint. Twist the joint is a yang expression of the defense. But at its core, it's first of all a deflection. And it's a ward off. And it's a ward off, so somebody first has to come towards you and you deflect it. And in the moment of deflection, there you find the place where you can then twist the joint. Right? Twist the joint is first a deflection, and then you twist the joint. And it's very simple to understand why. If you walk up to somebody and grab their arm and try to twist it, it's not going to work because they can resist. All of these twisting of the joint, all these joint locks that we're doing, because that's essentially what it is, only work if you're first being attacked. You're relying on the fact that somebody is attacking you. You empty their energy, which is the first yin aspect, which is the deflection. You empty their energy. Now that their energy is empty, now you can easily twist the arm. That's twist the joint. So first it's a deflection. It's actually a ward off that is then transformed into a twisted joint. Okay? And that's important. So again, here, by doing this kind of analysis, you start realizing, oh yeah, first it's a deflection. First you have to deflect the attack before you can do something about it. It's not just going twisting somebody's arm. At the core, it's a deflection. Then you twist. Right? So those are the two diagonals, or yin diagonals really, which is elbow strike and twist the joint. And again, both of them are first and foremost deflections, not attacks. Now, the other two that are left, shoulder strike and yank, or pluck, depending on the translation. Those two are attacks, and you can see that because you can walk up to somebody and suddenly hit them with your shoulder, or you can walk up to somebody and just suddenly pull them. So we know they're an attack. We're not relying on the other person to give us something to do. We're not using their own strength against them. Shoulder strike, right? And this is very important. It is a rising up and a hit with a shoulder. So it is a rising up and hit with a shoulder. It's not a shifting forward. I'm going to explain this in a second, but it's a rising up and hit. Rising up and hit. And this tilting is the yin aspect. So at the core, it's a yang move. But the yin aspect is this here. In the same way that press the yin aspect of press was the fact that it's round, short, and heavy. Shoulder strike is exactly the same thing. If anything, we're going even further. Instead of trying to go through over here, we're going to do a shoulder strike. We're going to rise up and go. It's enormously short and heavy. Right, right here, shoulder strike. In the same way, pluck is a grab and then a simple and a yank. Right? Now, one of the secret, the yin aspect of this move, because remember, the only attack that is pure yang, that is just a shut out of energy, is push. It's the only one that has a completely linear and external aspect. Right? Push. You're just shooting energy out. Pure yang. Yank, or pluck, has a yin aspect. And the yin aspect is the fact that it's actually connected to our waist. It's not the arms that are doing the work, it's the waist. And this is the yin aspect. When you grab somebody, it's the waist that moves, not the arms. That's the yin aspect of this move. And you can see that whether I'm going up and down along the vertical, or if I'm turning, it's the waist that turns, it's not the arm. My hand stays in front of my chest, and I turn the waist. So that's the yin aspect. It's the fact that the movement comes out of the waist, and it's often a circle, right? Or it's a drop towards the ground. So again, that's the yin quality of it. Circle or down. No matter what, the waist is generating the force. So it's not us generating a power that's out. It's us generating a power that's actually in. Right? That's the yin aspect. So that gives us all of our 8 moves. Right? The 4 major ones, Panglu Anji, ward off, roll back, push, and press. And then the 4 minor ones that are variations, actually, of the first 4. Right? Shoulder strike, yank, being the variations on push and press. And then we have twist the joint and elbow strike that are variation on ward off and roll back. Those are the 4, or 2 groups of 4, that generate the entire form. Right? That's the important thing. That's, in a way, is the clue to understanding everything that we're doing, is that everything is made out of these 8 basic moves. So a crucial idea is that these 8 basic moves, or 8 gates, because the word moves is actually is incorrect. They're not applications. They're not ways of describing how the body itself is moving through space. They're descriptions of qualities of energy. That's crucial. That's why on or push can be expressed in all sorts of different ways. That's why it can be a push, it can be a punch, it can be a knee strike, it can be a kick. They're all the same expression of a quality of energy. That's the crucial idea, which is why ward-off can be swooping up, swooping to the side. Right? A ward-off can also be done with a leg. If you're doing a leg press as opposed to a kick, that's a ward-off. You can even do a loo with a leg. You can do a loo in all sorts of different directions, right? Depending on how you're moving. So what we're talking about here are qualities of energy. What that means is that they're all grouped by how they move, but what are the mechanisms that are used to generate them. And one of the most important idea is that all of the attacks are generated by transforming a spiral into a straight line. The spiral can exist, usually it's at the waist, but it can exist either along the horizontal or the vertical. And depending on which one you're expressing, your body's going to do something very different. And it's a bit like if you had a spinning wheel or spinning top, and you put a pebble on it. That pebble, the minute it sits on the spinning wheel, is going to shoot out in a straight line. That's what we're doing when we're attacking, when we're projecting energy. It's transforming a circular motion into a straight line. That's the idea. So when I'm pushing, my hips, because I'm rising on the rear leg, my hips are turning. And my arms are going to take that circular motion and transform it into a straight motion, or a horizontal line in this case, right? So I'm rising up and turning, but transforming that rising spiral into a straight line, in the same way that a pebble that is put on a spinning plate will shoot out in a straight line. That's what we're working on. That's what we're doing, right? So basically at the waist, transforming the vertical energy of the leg into a horizontal turn, and then the upper body, so it's not the arm, it's actually the back and the chest, the middle dantian really, which then transform this circular energy into a straight line, right? You're turning and then transforming that into a straight line. You're turning, you're transforming the rotation of the hips into a straight line in the arms. So that's why we actually should not move our weight forward. If we move our weight forward, there is no transformation in the hips. Right? I'm not engaging the hips at all. If I'm here and I push and it's simply a shift forward of the weight, the waist is not engaged. Which means the power is not actually coming from the legs. It's not being engaged. The waist is not engaged, and we know that the waist is the commander. That's in the Tai Chi classics. There can be no transformation if the waist is not engaged. So the legs have to be engaged and have to stay connected. The waist has to be engaged in order to transform the vertical energy of the legs into a rotation. And again, the rotation can be along the vertical, which looks like this, right? I'm rotating. So when I push, the rotation still happens. It's just much smaller, but I'm taking the vertical line of the leg and it's rotating in the hips and then transforming, going in the same direction through the arms and the back to project the energy, to project that on-linear energy. Which is why when we did shoulder strike is not here. Shoulder strike is here. Because if I'm doing this, there's no transformation. All I'm doing is I'm leaning in that direction. What I want to do is rise up, then use the waist to transform that linear upward energy into sideways energy. Right? That's the transformation. Up, to side, which is also why you may want to make sure that your hips are not cocking out, because then the energy is going up and out. Instead, it's up and out this way. That's shoulder strike. Okay? You want to make sure that the legs are still generating, or the one leg, because remember, we're also dealing with empty and full. Clear separation between which leg is full, which leg is empty. One leg generates the power, the waist, which is the commander, transforms that power, and then the upper body expresses that power. Right? Up, transform, express. All of the moves are going to be that way. Ward off the back leg. All right, ward off the back leg. Rises, hips turn, whether it's here, here, here. This is an expression of the waist transformed by the arm. Roll back, same thing. Turn, turn, turn. Sitting on the rear leg, sitting back, hips turn, and transform. And then here, in rollback, for example, the direction of the energy is reversed. I'm receiving energy, and the upper body transforms the direction of the energy, which is then sent to the waist, which is then sent to the foot. Right? Which is why Lu and push, Lu and An, push, and rollback are mirror opposites. Rollback, you receive, sending into the foot. Push starts from the foot up and transform. So if you play them back and forth, they're actually mirror images. Okay? So that's the core mechanisms at the heart of all of the Tai Chi practice that we do. Everything else that we do is just an exploration of those concepts. It's just variations. How many ways can you express one of these 8? How many ways can you combine them together to form something which is useful? Right? It's a revelation of Pang energy. Pang doesn't have to be here. Pang can be here. Pang can be here. Pang can be here. Right? So the form then is an exploration of the qualities of the energy as expressed by different body parts in different directions. So, thing to remember, 8 moves expressed in all sorts of different directions with all sorts of different body parts. But there are 8 qualities of energy that are present in every single named move. And you can deconstruct a move and find its components, find out what makes it, how it is arranged, and how these 8 moves are combined together to generate those named moves, like single whip, for example. Okay, that's the crucial idea.